This tutorial will go over how to do a slip knot, a chain, a single crochet, and a slip stitch. So let's get started. In order to start most projects, you're going to start with a slip knot. And the way that I do it is by wrapping my tail around my fingers like this so I make a cross. I then put my thumb and index finger into this hole and grab the working yarn. So you see this is my tail over here, and I'm putting my fingers to grab the yarn. After that, I'm just holding this tail over here really closely and making this knot. So once we have the slip knot, you just need to put your hook through the loop like so and pull it tight. Take care not to pull it so tight that you can't actually get it off your hook, but it's tight enough that it's not hanging so it just goes through. We're going to move on to how to do a chain, which is the basis of most of your projects. So I'm going to just wrap my finger around the yarn like this. If you want to see it, this is how I hold my yarn. There are many ways to do it, so do whatever feels comfortable for you. You're going to wrap around the yarn around your hook like so, and just catch this yarn under the hook so it's staying put while moving this loop on your hook straight through. So now that you see, we have a V. We're going to do this 10 more times. So we're going to wrap the hook around just like so and pull through. So now we have made 2 chains so far. We're going to keep going. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So now that we have our chain, we can move on to our single crochet. If you find that your chain is too tight and you can't get your hook, you can't get the yarn through the hook like this, if it's really tight, or you find that it's actually really loose and when you create a chain it looks something like this while the rest of your chain looks like that, editor's cut. I'd really recommend restarting and practicing until you have even tension. The way that you hold your yarn is almost just as important as the loops that are actually on your hook. Practice by holding your yarn in different ways. Go through the motions until you are comfortable with how your chain looks. It shouldn't be too tight or loose. It should be just right. Going back, now that we have our 11 chains, we're going to start turning. Now, the reason why you make 11 chains is because this last chain over here is actually our turning chain. That means that we don't crochet into this first chain. We're going to take our hook and put it into the second chain over here. And there are a couple of ways that you can do this, but the most common way is to take your V that you see over here, this over here, and we're going to take our hook and put it just into this top loop over here. You see it, how I'm going through just that loop. Once you go through that loop, similar to how you did a chain, you're going to wrap your yarn just like this and pull through. Now you should have 2 loops on your hook. Now to do a single crochet, we're going to wrap the yarn around our hook again and pull through. Now, in order to complete our row, we just have to do this 9 more times. So we're going to insert a hook into the next V. You see that this one's a little loose because we just single crocheted into it. We're going to move on to this next loop over here. So now we're just going to put our hook through and yarn over, pull through, yarn over, and pull through again. So now we have 2 chains. And something that I like to recommend when you're just starting out is to grab a stitch marker and put your stitch marker into the first chain that you made. This way you can't lose track when you're going around and you have to find your very first stitch that you're going into. So I'm going to go into my next chain, which is this one over here. You're gonna pull your hook through, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2. And we're just going to continue this down the row. Take care not to be too loose or too tight when you are pulling through your stitches. You don't want to start off your stitch with something like this, where the loop is really loosely hanging over, just because it would create a really uneven top. So let's say if I try doing something like this, if I go through and you kind of take a look at your stitches, you can tell that this last one is really loose and it would make for a really uneven project. So I'm just going to undo it and put in my last stitch. So this is the last chain in our starting row. Great, so now we have our first row. We're just going to do that again. So in order to turn, you just chain 1, and turn. Similar to how we started our first row, we're going to ignore this very first chain that we just made and go back into our last stitch of the first row. So if you look at your project from top down, you're actually going to see all of these V's on the very top. And in order to continue your row, you have to go through both V's. So you can see the first V over here. We're going to go underneath both of these loops. So when you go through, it kind of looks like this. And similar to how we've been doing our first row, we're just going to yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2. And the rest of the stitch will continue the same way. You see this V over here? We're going to go through this next stitch. Just for clarity, it is this hole right here. Just for clarity again, when you're looking for the next stitch, it is the V next to the stitch that you just done. Thanks to the stitch marker, I'm easily able to see that this last V is my very last stitch for this row. And I just take it out, go on the side, and just go through it like I normally did for the... I just go through like I did for the rest of this row. So now we have completed 2 rows for our project. Now the last technique I wanted to go through is how to do a slip stitch. Similar to how we've been doing, chain 1 and turn. Find your V again, that would be this very first one. Slip stitch is basically a pared down version of the chain. In order to do so, we go through our V, yarn over, pull through, and this time we're going to pull through our the loop that was on our hook. Now this creates kind of like a half stitch, and you can use it in a couple of applications like making ribbing or closing your rows. So we're going to do that again in this next V over here. We're going to go through, we're going to yarn over, go through, and go through your first. This will create a fairly tight stitch, so I recommend holding your yarn a little looser than you normally would, just so you're not struggling to go through your slip stitch if that's what the pattern calls for. You're going to go through, yarn over, pull through, insert your hook, yarn over, pull through, pull through. Now, another way that you can easily check if you have the right number of stitches, so you're making sure that you're not dropping a stitch for your rows, is to simply count them. So I see that I have one stitch over here. This is my starting one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I have completed my third row of slip stitches. And that's all for this tutorial. I'll see you guys in the next part, where we will go over a half double crochet, and a treble crochet.